and welcome to a breaking news episode of the Days of Roar podcast. I'm Evan Petzold, the Detroit Tigers beat writer for the Detroit Free Press, and I'm joined by Chris Brown from Tigers Minor League Report. We are here to talk about the Tigers signing left-hander Framber Valdez to a 3-year, $115 million contract. But before we get into that, the Tigers and left-hander Tarik Skubal completed their arbitration hearing, with Skubal winning and securing a $32 million salary for 2026, rather than the $19 million proposed by the Tigers. We're going to dig into that case with an arbitration expert in another one of these bonus episodes, so more on that coming soon. But before we discuss Valdez, Chris, I want to get your immediate reaction to Skubal and his $32 million proposal winning the arbitration hearing.
Well, I mean, I was happy for Skubal and happy for the ramifications it has for players, other players down the road. These guys are going to be 5+ years. This was kind of a really interesting strategy, and it worked out, and it's going to open up a lot of things. Now, it might be, what they call a Pyrrhic victory, because I think the owners are very likely going to now bring arbitration as an issue for the CBA at the end of the year. And arbitration reform, it has to happen. So we can't be paying these guys like they're free agents before they're free agents. That won't work. So suddenly the players, the owners, I could see saying like, hey, you could have reformed arbitration or you could have a salary cap. You're going to have to pick one of them. And all of a sudden, and I'm sure the players will push back in both those cases, but I don't know. There are a lot of different aspects to this the whole thing has always been more complicated than I think people realize. But yeah, the immediate reaction is like, hey, good for Skubal. And based on what the Tigers did the other day, all right, well, I guess they have a whole bunch of money, so who cares? Let's go play baseball.
Speaking of what the Tigers did, the Tigers signed left-hander Framber Valdez to a 3-year, $115 million contract. The average annual value is $38.3 million, which is the highest ever for a left-handed pitcher. But there's a $20 million signing bonus, and there's an unknown amount of deferred money, and we still don't know how the money is going to be divided over the 3 years of the contract. And this is the most important part of the deal. It's a 3-year contract with an opt-out clause after the second season. So Framber Valdez is locked in with the Tigers for 2026 and 2027. But if he wants, he can become a free agent after the 2027 season. So it's essentially a 2-year contract with a player option. The deal came together Wednesday night, so it's been about 24 hours. Now that it's sunk in, what's your general reaction to the Tigers signing Framber Valdez?
Well, my first reaction involves swearing, but you brought this up on the last show.
Yeah, if you go back and listen to the previous episode of Days of Roar, I did say, watch out, Framber Valdez to the Tigers. And I wasn't hearing anything concrete that linked Valdez and the Tigers at the time. But the reason I said that is because the Tigers like to be opportunistic in free agency by taking advantage of markets that have crashed. And I knew the Tigers were going to sign another starter at some point, regardless of the Tarik Skubal arbitration situation. But I did not expect it to be Framber Valdez. I thought it would be somebody like a Chris Bassett or Lucas Giolito or Nick Martinez. So in theory, I wasn't surprised because this is what the Tigers do. But in practice, yeah, I was surprised because I didn't expect the Tigers to pull this off with a starter of Framber Valdez's caliber. But yes, I did mention it on the latest episode of Days of Roar.
Yeah, I mean, we were sitting here, discussing all these kind of third-tier starters. Are they going to, Jose Quintana? Are they going to bring somebody in that maybe can help? Do they go and get the best guy on the market? And certainly the $38 million was an eye-popping number to me. That's the most they've ever given to anybody. It's more than Miguel Cabrera, Verlander, or anybody. So now there's deferred money there, so we don't know exactly what it's going to ultimately be. But still, it's a lot of money. And I think to your point, the Tigers like to be opportunistic. I think we're also getting a good idea of the way they may operate in the future for free agency, which is waiting for these things to play out, but also not being afraid to put up pretty high AAVs, average values, as long as it's a short deal. And I think 9 times out of 10, I think owners and GMs would prefer short deals. The dollar value, you want it lower, but whatever, you'll take it because it's not going to hamper you down the road. And you look at the Tigers have so much money coming off the books. They're not a super high payroll team, right? I think they're up to 11 now, but you've got Skubal's $32 million coming off the books next year. You've got Flaherty and Torres and possibly Jansen. That they're going to be pretty lean again. And so maybe we'll see something like this again next year where they wait the market out and then sign somebody to a high dollar value deal for a year or two. And this might just be the way they're going to supplement their young core. It's an interesting dynamic that I don't think a lot of teams have done yet, but maybe this is going to be the Tigers' way.
Yeah, a couple of different thoughts. I mean, my first thought that comes to my mind when the Tigers signed Framber Valdez is, oh my goodness, and to your point, may have involved a swear word there. The Tigers have the best 1-2 punch atop any rotation in baseball with Framber Valdez and Tarek Skubal. I mean, it's got to be up there. If it's not one of the best, it very well may be the best. I mean, when you take a look at it, only 5 left-handers have thrown 350 innings with a sub 3.5 ERA over the past 2 seasons combined. That list includes Skubal and Valdez. I mean, Tarek Skubal, the first back-to-back American League Cy Young winner in the 21st century. And then you have Valdez receiving AL Cy Young votes in 3 of the past 4 seasons. And he finished as high as 5th place in 2022 when he took down a career high 201 1/3 innings. So this is a guy who's going to eat innings. He's durable, but he's also really good as well. And you pair him with Tarek Skubal, that is a really dangerous 1-2 punch at the top of the rotation. And then being opportunistic. Yeah, this is the way the Tigers want to operate. And we've seen them do it before. They re-signed Jack Flaherty in February of 2025, and now they've signed Valdez here in February of 2026, and both of those deals came in the final week or two before spring training. You go back to last offseason, Jack Flaherty, he was projected for like 4 years, $85 million. Tigers got him for 2 years, $35 million. Then you say, okay, what's up with this offseason? Well, you have Framber Valdez projected for like 5 years, $140 million, and he only gets 3 years, $115 million. So these guys making significantly less than what we would have thought. The one thing is, though, both of those players wanted to be Tigers. Jack Flaherty had already been a Tiger, and he wanted to join the Tigers on a short-term deal. Framber Valdez, he has the connection with A.J. Hinch from when A.J. Hinch was his manager with the Houston Astros. He wanted to join the Tigers, right? If Framber Valdez was just saying, hey, I'll join any team, and if there were a bunch of 3-year, $115 million offers out there, and he didn't like the idea of joining forces with A.J. Hinch, maybe the strategy doesn't work out because maybe there's a different ballpark that may be better for him. Maybe there's a better infield defense that could be better for him, right? Like there are many different things that fall in maybe a better location, right? Maybe he wants to pitch somewhere other than in Detroit. So I think it works out because players like a Jack Flaherty and a Framber Valdez wanted to join the Tigers for specific reasons. I think that strategy of waiting until the very end of spring training can come back to bite you if there are a bunch of teams in on these short-term, high-value deals and the players just like happen to want to play elsewhere. Like it's not always easy to pull these things off, but if you can find the right fit, which the Tigers have done in back-to-back off seasons, it certainly works. So when it comes down to the contract itself, it's outstanding. And then when you come, talk about the fit, like, does it get any better than Tarek Skubal and Framber Valdez at the top of the rotation? I don't think so. And speaking of Tarek Skubal, we know he's locked up now for $32 million, not $19 million. He's a Tiger for 2026. We've known that. Do you think this signing means anything for Skubal, whether it's this year, next year, whatever?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the instant reactions were like, oh, they're not signing Skubal. But I think we pretty much assumed that they weren't going to sign him next year. It may make an offer, but yeah.
Not happening.
And then the other reaction was like, oh, they're trading Skubal now. And I don't think so. I don't think, I think it's been debunked now anyway, but like people thought, okay, this means they're trading him. And no, I don't think you can make this deal if you're just going to turn right around and trade Skubal. So, it means they're, like you said, they're going to have a nasty 1-2 punch this year. And for the Tigers, depending on what happens in 2027, Framber Valdez is not Tarek Skubal, right? He's not the best pitcher on the planet, but he's one of the 10 best pitchers in baseball over the last 5-6 years. So if you lose Skubal next year, which is we view is pretty likely, he's not a bad guy to have at the front of your rotation at all. He's 32, he'll be 33, so he probably won't be an elite starting pitcher, but you bought yourself another kind of extended window of contention, I guess you would say. Like, this took them from projected, 83, 84 wins to 85, 86. Losing Skubal's going to drop you back down, but you're still going to stay in that 80-plus win range with Framber Valdez and then adding whatever you do next year. So I think it buys them, like I said, another year of contention. But regarding Skubal, I don't think it changes things by that much.
Yeah, in terms of the team as a whole in the rotation, I think you sign Framber Valdez at this short-term, high-value deal. Like, Tigers are showing that they are focused on winning the World Series in 2026, but at the same time, they're not forgetting about long-term sustainability. Like, they're able to both try to win the World Series in 2026, prepare for the departure of Tarek Skubal, and then also preserve this payroll flexibility down the road. Like, I think it's a really smart approach from President of Baseball Operations, Scott Harris, the way that he's gone about it. And you have 3 starters who are going to become free agents: Tarek Skubal, Jack Flaherty, and Casey Mize. So if those guys are going to become free agents after 2026, that leaves Framber Valdez, Reese Olson, Jackson Jobe, and Troy Melton as the projected starters for 2027. Imagine that without Framber Valdez. You're talking about Reese Olson, Jackson Jobe, and Troy Melton. You don't feel as good as you feel with Framber Valdez being a part of that group for 2027. So I don't think the Tigers are really like going all in Skubal's final year. Like, they passed on Alex Bregman. I think if they would have gone out and gotten Alex Bregman on top of all this, it would have been like, oh my goodness, this is really an all-in type of approach. Or even if they would have added another reliever like a Sir Anthony Dominguez. I don't think this is truly an all-in approach. I think it's more of like an aggressive push to go out and win the World Series in 2026 before Skubal reaches free agency, without compromising the long-term plan, because the Tigers do want to contend in 2027 and beyond. This isn't just about 2026, and it's never been about 2026. There's a reason why Scott Harris came out after the trade deadline and says, he doesn't believe in a Tarek Skubal window to win and that he thinks it's an illusion. It's because he wants to contend every single year. So this does give the Tigers a good chance to go out and make it to the World Series and potentially win the World Series in 2026, but it also doesn't hinder them from being a competitive team in 2027 and beyond. So I think for all those reasons, it just makes so much sense.
Yeah, and they're still, their payroll has increased quite a bit in the last couple of days, but they're still under the first luxury tax threshold.
Let's get crazy.
People were like, I think you made a great point just now where people were like, hey, the Tigers need to go all in. And this is about as all in as they're going to go, I think, it's good. It makes them a formidable contender, but it's not the level of we're going to trade all our top prospects to make it this year. They're going to stay within their MO, right? But this is them making a run at it. And so, yeah, it's a fun time to be a Tigers fan. I think, it's nice to do this right before spring training. I'm sure, I don't know if Framber Valdez has star power or anything like that, but I would assume that they got a few more calls at the ticket office. And Tigers fans are probably excited.
I want to get into the scouting report. What are the Tigers getting here in Framber Valdez? When I think about that question, I immediately think about durability. I mentioned it once. I'm going to mention it again. This is a guy who has been on the injured list just twice in the big leagues. He had a fractured left ring finger in March of 2021 and left elbow inflammation in April of 2024. Aside from that, he has been as healthy come. This is a guy who has thrown at least 175 innings in each of the past 4 seasons, including that career high 201 and 1/3 innings in 2022. He had a career best 2.82 ERA in 2022 and finished in 5th place in American League Cy Young voting. He also had a 93-pitch no-hitter against the Guardians in August of 2023. By the way, he's really good against Cleveland, so that's helpful. If that trend continues. He's had 9 complete games. He's had 3 shutouts throughout his MLB career. He's thrown over 1,000 innings. I mean, this is just a dude who is going to take the ball. He is going to pitch. And he's not just going to give you your 5 innings. Like, he's going to give you your 6, 7 innings every time out. And I think that's really valuable. For the pitch mix, it's a 94-mile-an-hour sinker. He has an elite ground ball rate. He uses the sinker and the curveball heavily. He also uses a changeup, a slider, and then barely uses his 4-seam fastball. The sinker has gotten hit, but it also leads to a bunch of ground balls, so that's valuable. And then the curveball, that's what gets the swings and misses. The changeup is really good against right-handed hitters. This is a complete pitcher, all in all. He does a lot of things well. I love the fact that he keeps the ball on the ground. I'm a little bit concerned about what that means with the Tigers' infield defense. You have Spencer Torkelson at first base. He has been improved there. Gleyber Torres at second base. He is a below-average defender. Who knows what shortstop looks like, whether it's Zach McKinstry, Javier Baez, or a combination of both. Maybe Kevin McGonigal at some point, and you're looking at below average defense there from McGonigal, probably above average defense from McKinstry and Baez. And then Colt Keith at third base, I think that has a chance to be below average as well. So a lot of ground balls with maybe a below average infield defense. That causes me to be a little bit concerned. But aside from that, there's not really a whole lot that I can nitpick when it comes to Framber Valdez.
Yeah, I mean, you touched on it all there. I just think of consistency, right? Like, it's really hard to be consistent in baseball, and he's been basically the same pitcher every year. It's going to be an ERA somewhere between like 2.8 and 3.6. He's not going to be that guy who's probably going to come out and just have like the monster Cy Young campaign where he's 200 strikeouts and, an ERA in the high 1s or low 2s, right? Like, but he's going to be durable. He's going to go out there. He's going to give you 6, 7 innings in just about every game. And as you said, he's not just a ground ball pitcher. He is the most extreme ground ball starting pitcher in baseball over the last 4 years by like a decent amount, like 60% ground balls for him. The next closest is like 57.4. So he gets a lot of them. And I do think that's a legitimate concern about their infield defense. But I know the Tigers are pretty clever with positioning and they do put a premium. We saw Gleyber Torres get, I think, a good deal better or more reliable on defense last year. I don't think he was good, but he was not the butcher that he was made to be in New York. A little focus on that is good. And then, just going out there. And as you mentioned, it's the sinker, it's the curveball. The curveball is really fun to look at. He has kind of alternated between slider and changeup usage, and the slider usage was not very high at all last year. I wonder if the Tigers might try to fold that back in a little bit more, but they're probably going to leave him. This is a veteran. They're going to probably let him do what he does best. And if there are issues, then they'll try to fix it. But this is a guy, he's your number 2 starter in the playoffs.
The only other concern that I have is Framber Valdez in his last 10 games in the 2025 season. It was a 6.05 ERA, and the Houston Astros went 2-8 in those 10 games. Had he performed better, you could easily say that the Astros would have made it into the postseason and the Tigers would have been knocked out. If you remember, the Astros and the Tigers, they had the same record when the 2025 season ended, but the Tigers had the tiebreaker over the Astros and that allowed them to get in. But if Valdez pitches better down the stretch, then maybe things are different there. That's the only thing that I'm curious about. Like, is that going to carry over into the start of his tenure with the Tigers? I wouldn't think so. But at the same time, 6.05 ERA in his final 10 starts of 2025, that is a little bit alarming.
Yeah, and people may remember one of those games was against the Tigers. The Tigers jumped all over him, I want to say, in the first couple innings.
7 runs.
I think he ended up staying in for at least 4 or 5 innings. Like he battled through it, but yeah, he was not fooling them at all. Yeah, you would hope that the Tigers did their research there and tried to figure out what was going on, if he was hurt or if he was doing something different. Yeah, and then the other concern for me, a little bit, he is playoff tested, right? 85 career playoff innings, 17 starts, something like that. But his performance in the playoffs has been pretty hit or miss. He's had a couple really rough postseasons. His ERA in the playoffs is what is it, 4.5, 4.34. Not awful. We've seen some great pitchers struggle in the playoffs. Some, Justin Verlander, every time he gets to the World Series, forgets how to pitch. Clayton Kershaw has terrible numbers in the postseason in general. So you don't want to make too much over that. But, if they get there and it becomes a problem, maybe we could talk about it then. But he's also probably fully capable of going out and giving you 6-7 innings in the playoffs, which is what you need. They have not had anybody outside of Skubal who can give them any sort of length in the playoffs. And the longer the series is, the more troublesome that becomes. You can get by with it in 3-game series, but not in 5-game series we've seen so far. So this should help with that.
He has struggled as of late, but I will go back to the 2022 World Series when he had a 1.46 ERA in 12 1/3 innings in 2 starts. That was the Houston Astros winning the World Series over the Philadelphia Phillies, and Framber Valdez playing a big role. So hopefully, if the Tigers get there in 2026, he'll be able to recapture that type of performance. The red flag for me, though, is for those who aren't aware, and this situation occurred on September 2nd, 2025, Framber Valdez and his catcher, Cesar Salazar, had a controversial cross-up where a 93-mile-an-hour sinker, it hit the catcher in the chest, and Valdez did not show any immediate response when it happened. And all of this happened 2 pitches after Trenton Grisham of the Yankees hit a home run off Valdez. And on the pitch that led to the home run, Valdez tried to shake off Salazar. Then Salazar motioned for Valdez to step off the mound to reset, only for Valdez to throw the pitch. And then Grisham hits the home run. So that happens. And then 2 pitches later, Valdez drills Salazar in the chest with a 93-mile-an-hour sinker. And both those guys said it wasn't intentional. So I guess we'll never know what actually happened, but it certainly looked intentional. So for me, the character there is a little bit of a red flag. Obviously that can be proven with good character coming over to the Tigers. I'm sure he has a track record of being a fine teammate and all that. But, when that happens in the middle of a game, it definitely causes the sirens to go off a little bit. And that was something that people were talking about all offseason as to why is Framber Valdez still in the market? Well, maybe there's this thought that he's not a good teammate. Maybe, people thought that the character was something to question, right? Maybe that impacted his value. I'm sure it didn't help his value. So is that a red flag for you, something that you're concerned about? Or do you think that was more of a one-off, or are we just in wait and see mode?
Yeah, I think it's a mild concern, but what you hope is that Hinch, knows him from their time together. And even I think maybe Jake Rogers, did he come up with Framber Valdez in the minors? There may be a little bit, a connection there. I don't know if they cross paths much in the minors, but you hope that, you hope that sort of thing doesn't repeat itself, obviously. And I guess you'd be a little bit concerned about it, but beyond that, I don't remember him being involved in any other big incidents or, throwing at people or getting in fights with teammates. Now, sometimes teams need somebody who's a little quick to anger. Sometimes that helps. But I trust AJ Hinch to be able to manage the clubhouse. And I don't think, I mean, remember when Alex Lang got upset and fired the ball, 100 miles an hour into the net above the dugout, and Hinch came out and it just, tore him a new one very briefly. And then Lang was gone. And he came back, basically, he got hurt back in the minors and he came back for one inning last year. And that was it. Alex Lang is gone. So, it's easier to do that with a guy who's not making $38 million, but I don't think Hinch is going to put up with any nonsense. So I'm not too worried about it.
AJ Hinch cares a lot about the culture that he's been able to create, especially over the past few years, but really during his entire Tigers tenure. And so I don't think he's going to let somebody like Framber Valdez stand in the way of impacting the culture behind the scenes. And with that being said, I don't think AJ would allow this to happen if he thought that there were any concerns. So I think AJ Hinch, knowing the player and also understanding how much AJ places value in the culture behind the scenes, if he's going to sign off on it, then I'm going to be good with it until I'm proven otherwise. Looking at the rotation right now, who do you think is the odd man out in the rotation now that Framber Valdez is aboard? And I'm going to surprise you and probably surprise some of our listeners here, but I am still working through some things. I've just heard enough that's making me worried about Reese Olson, so much so that I'm not even considering him for the opening day starting rotation until I hear otherwise on that. So without Reese Olson, for me, it's Tarek Skubal, Framber Valdez, Jack Flaherty, Casey Mize, and either Drew Anderson or Troy Melton. We've had this conversation, Drew Anderson or Troy Melton, before. I do think Drew Anderson starts in the MLB rotation and Troy Melton starts in the AAA Toledo rotation. And that's not to say Melton isn't as talented. I think Melton is more talented than Anderson, and ultimately will be a long-term piece of the Tigers rotation. It's just for now, I think the Tigers would be okay with Drew Anderson taking down a lot of innings and trying to stick as a starter in the big leagues while Troy Melton works on some things in AAA Toledo, even if it's something like sequencing the hitters. And the Tigers can't send Drew Anderson to Toledo, so it's either the rotation or the bullpen in the big leagues for him. But Melton has minor league options. He can be sent to Toledo. So the other thing is, I do think the best version of the Tigers has Troy Melton in the bullpen. So that's something that I'm sure Scott Harris and AJ Hinch are going to have to discuss as spring training goes along. Like, the best version of this team does have Troy Melton as part of the pitching staff. And if it is in the bullpen, then it's in the bullpen. But I do think it would just be more beneficial to have Melton in AAA Toledo, stretch him out as a starter, work on some things, and then come up and make a really big impact out of the rotation closer to the second half of the season. I just think that is probably the best fit. But again, you think about Troy Melton, and when he's right, he's really good. So I'd rather have him in the bullpen than in the Toledo rotation if it were me. But at the same time, I'm just trying to read the tea leaves and thinking about how things will shake out. I just wouldn't be surprised if Melton was in AAA to start the year.
Yeah, I think you brought up a good point there. And I did kind of consider this after the signing. I'm like, maybe things are not boding well for Reese Olson. Like, it would be an impetus for a move like this, because you're kind of, in terms of talent and production, he might be your number 2 starter before this, might be number 3, be number 4, but you've seen him pitch really well. But that was a shoulder injury, if I recall, right?
Yeah, and he's had it in back-to-back years. He's had shoulder injury in 2024 and in 2025. And from what I've heard so far, again, still doing reporting on this, still trying to track everything down, but it sounds like the Tigers found out about the severity of Olson's situation about a week ago. So that kind of puts it into perspective.
So, yeah, I mean, this happens every year to some degree, where players roll into spring training and you find out, oh, this guy's injured, he's out for 6 months, or this guy got hurt during a workout and he's not going to, he's going to be delayed a little bit. So we'll see. I don't want to, raise the flags too much,
and I don't want to speculate too much either.
But so and even beyond that, like, there are 4 guys in the rotation for sure, just because of how they're being paid. I mean, I guess it's possible they could put Mize in the bullpen, but I don't think that's happening.
No.
So so then it comes down to that 5th spot. And yeah, I think I could picture Melton being the 5th starter and Anderson in the bullpen, but I think you're right that I just kind of looked at what they've done with Kaider Montero the last 2 years, where they kept him starting in Toledo because they knew you don't get through a full season healthy with your rotation.
Well, where are you at on that? Like, would you rather have Troy Melton in your big league bullpen or in your AAA rotation, knowing the value that he can provide when he is on the mound, regardless of it's as a starter or as a reliever? Like, if you want to win games in April, May, June, like, are you better off with Troy Melton in your bullpen or with Troy Melton in the AAA rotation?
So yeah, I mean, this is one of those times where you have to, you're putting this year in consideration, but also the future. And if you think Melton is the key to your rotation in the future, I don't think you want to, have to try to stretch him out completely next year. I think you want, in my mind, I think it would be better off to have him starting in Toledo. And then at some point he's going to come up. He's going to have to for a doubleheader, or somebody gets hurt and he's coming up and he's going to give you 50 to 100 innings or whatever. And maybe you get him to, I don't know how many he threw total last year, but you get him up to 140 or 150 this year. And then he becomes a bullpen piece down the stretch again and in the playoffs. And when you really need him, because yes, I agree. He would be very good in the bullpen and it would help a lot, but it's just one of those things is that so important now, or is it more important later that he's a starter? And I really do think they want to develop him as a starter for the future, because he's got everything else you want, right? He's got the build. He seemingly has the durability. He's got the pitch mix. He throws a lot of strikes. He misses bats with his fastball. There's a lot to like there. That's also what makes him a good reliever. So, who knows? I've always thought, say Reese Olson is healthy or healthy-ish. I always thought that he might be an interesting reliever. And this goes back to when he was a prospect, because his fastball didn't play terribly well, but he had this, he could really spin the ball. He's got this really good changeup. He could be an Alex Lang style reliever who's just going up there throwing junk and then sneaking fastballs by guys. It could be really good if he can handle that. Now, it's one thing to get injured when you're trying to shoulder a big workload. It's another thing, can you survive having to pitch on back-to-back days at full effort? I don't know. And I don't know if he's healthy at all. But so I don't know if I've given you an answer. I've just kind of, in the hamster wheel thinking this out in my head. But yeah, I guess I would start the year probably with Melton, either the number 5 starter or starting in Toledo, and Anderson, number 5 starter, or in the bullpen.
That'll be a big storyline as we get to spring training. Last thing before we get out of here, do you expect the Tigers to make a 40-man roster move in the coming days? Or do you think they will delay making the Framber Valdez signing official until pitchers and catchers report on February 11th, and then move Jackson Jobe to the 60-day injured list? That way no one has to get slashed from the 40-man.
Yeah, I mean, I think the obviously the February 11th, the one where you can just put Jobe on the 60-day would be ideal. I don't know what the rules are for that sort of thing. When do you have to sign a guy officially at a certain point, within a week after making the announcement? Does it matter? If it doesn't, then yeah, just push it. Say, oh, he's in another country having some visa issues. I don't know, or we got to get everybody up to Detroit instead of Lakeland, something like that. But it would be a little bit unfortunate if they have to move somebody off the 40-man roster that they don't want to, just to fit this in when they could do it a couple days later. So I don't know. I would be pushing for February 11th, but I don't know if there are rules, basically is what I'm saying.
If they needed to, could they try to sneak Bo Brisky through, being a guy who went through the arbitration process, and it's 1.1 million, a little bit more than that actually, but 1.1 million. Do you think a team would take a chance on him as a waiver claim at 1.1 million? Or do you think the Tigers could theoretically DFA him, get him through the process, and then send him to Toledo that way?
No, I think that's entirely possible. I think you could see something like that. That's a little bit like what the Dodgers did with Andy Ibanez.
And what the Tigers did with Akil Baddoo in the past as well.
Yeah, they so you can, you've got this guy, you gave him a little bit of money, probably more money than any other team wants to pay him. So then you DFA him and you get him right back. So I could see that happening. We talked before about Bailey Horn, Drew Summers. There are some guys on the 40-man roster that you wouldn't necessarily miss a ton, but I'm sure that they are on the 40-man roster for a reason. So if the Tigers can get them without having to do any of that, I'm sure that's the preferred method.
All right, everyone, that's all we have for this bonus episode on the Days of Roar podcast. Thank you so much to our producer, Robin Chan, for putting in the extra work to edit and publish this episode. Check back for another bonus episode about Tarek Skubal's arbitration case on Friday, and then our regular hour-long episode, which drops Monday or Tuesday. Until then, go in peace.